This one is rest from distress, finding your happy place in difficult times. Do you sometimes struggle to do that? Bad things happen to us. We live in this world, and bad things happen. We can't escape them. But we can always handle it better, and we can also stop creating our own. Sometimes we're our own worst enemies. Without realizing it, many of us fall into thinking errors or cognitive distortions, which end up causing immune-busting stress in our lives. And so we're going to take a quick look at some 10 thinking errors, then see if you fall into any of these categories. Thinking error number 1, black and white, or polarized thinking. Everything is seen in absolutes. It's either black or white, it's either good or evil, there's nothing in between. But that kind of thinking is done in extremes, and so, to see clearly, we need to look at the whole big picture. While there are certainly moral absolutes, in many areas of life, there should also be room for valid but opposing points of view. Then thinking error number 2, somebody who makes sweeping generalizations. And when people do this, they draw important conclusions or assume there is a rule of life based on one experience. And so we need to watch out for those words, always or never. When you say to someone, you always do this, that's really unfair, because they don't always do that. Or you never do this or that. Well, that's not a true statement either. That's a sweeping generalization that we shouldn't do to ourselves or to anyone else. And researchers have actually associated this thinking error with overgeneralization with anxiety disorders and PTSD. So what's PTSD, everyone? Post-traumatic stress syndrome. Okay, or disorder. Thinking error number 3, mental filters. We see what we set out to see. Looking through a mental filter is like looking at life through dirty glasses. And this can trigger or worsen both anxiety and depression. Thinking error number 4, explaining away the positive. People who commit this thinking error actually do see the positives, but they just explain them away. The trouble with this mental error is that it leads people to think they have no control over their circumstances. And don't we all have choices in life? Don't we get to choose how we handle each situation and how we want to think about it? And then thinking error number 5, mind reading. Mind reading happens when people assume they know what others are thinking. And we've probably all done that at different times in our lives. Or we assume that we know what they're going to say, and oftentimes we find out we're wrong. And this is often a cause of many relationship problems. I know husbands and wives are sometimes good at this, make this mistake of thinking they know what their spouse is thinking because they've lived with them all these years, but unfortunately that's not always the case. We can assume when we shouldn't, and that's not what the spouse was thinking at all. So if in doubt at all about what another person is thinking, the best thing to do is what? Ask them. That's right. What did you mean by what you said, or what are you thinking? Number 6, that's the fortune teller error. And people who commit this error think that they know the future before the future arrives. So they might determine how that person is going to behave even before that person has a chance to decide for themselves. And they put and so this error is a very common one, and it's linked to both anxiety and depression. Number 7, magnification or minimization. With this problem, people exaggerate the importance of something small or minimize the importance of something truly significant. So the key to overcoming this is to back up and look at the big picture once again. And then number 8, emotional reasoning. I'm not sharing with you everything they say under these because there just is not time. You'd have to get the book for yourself, and if you don't have one, just see me or Terry. I don't see Kezia, but anyways, we can get you one. Emotional reasoners take whatever they feel as the gospel truth. So this is the way I feel. Tough. If you don't like it, that's how I feel. And so to them, that's truth. And they often rely on gut feelings to make major decisions. But should we make a decision on just because of how we feel? Sometimes we need to look at, as several of these say, look at the whole big picture before you make a decision. And this is the number one cause of laziness. I don't feel like working, therefore I won't. So they base all their decisions on their feelings. But you can't live life that way. Feelings can't be trusted a lot of times. Number 9, labeling. I would dare say that all of us at one time or another has been guilty of labeling someone else. Labeling fuels and maintains. We might label someone as bad or stupid or lazy or stubborn because maybe they acted that way one time, and so we've given them a label and we just see them that way all the time, and that's totally unfair to them. Labeling fuels and maintains negative emotions. It is very detrimental to relationships and can lead to negative behaviors. And then number 10, personalization. And examples of this include blaming yourself for things that aren't your fault, or believing that you are being intentionally targeted or excluded when really you aren't. I don't know if any of you have ever had this reaction, but you've been in a room full of people and they're all talking and then they're looking at you and they're still talking and you end up thinking that maybe they're talking about you and you start to feel very uncomfortable. But they're probably not talking about you at all. So we just need to think about our ways of thinking about things and see where we might need to make some changes in life. So venting is out and forgiveness is in. Venting is problematic since anger tends to worsen when it is expressed. Have you ever discovered that? If you start venting your anger, what happens? You get louder and louder and angrier and angrier. And that's how, and road rage is a prime example of that. Anger is detrimental to physical health. On the other hand, forgiveness has been shown to promote health by giving a sense of relief and even lowering blood pressure. Don't you feel so much better when you have forgiven someone or you have been forgiven yourself? Because, forgiveness is healing. So make peace with yourself. Going against one's conscience is how do I want to say it? We should never go against our conscience. Let's put it that way. When we proclaim one set of life values but live another, we create cognitive dissonance, and that puts us under a continual state of distress. So if you're in a crowd of people and they're trying to get you to do something that you don't want to do, listen to your conscience and don't do it. Pay attention to the set of values you have. And if you aren't sure what you value the most in life, ask yourself, what do I love to talk about, think about, or spend time on? The answers to those questions will show what you really value. Paul gives us, I didn't exactly look this up, but I think it's in Philippians chapter 4. I have learned in whatsoever state I am in therewith to be content. And contentment Godliness with contentment is great gain. And that was actually one of the scriptures in the youth lesson this week. So it's something to think about. Be content with what you have and where you're at in life. And think about your values and who you want to be in God's eyes. And get rest from distress.